So I'll start that off. I'm Langdon Plummer, Chair of the Exeter Planning Board, and Nancy?
Nancy Belanger, alternate. And I am alone in the room.
Okay. Aaron Brown?
Aaron Brown, alone in my office.
Okay. John Gruder?
John Gruder, alone in my home office.
Peter Steckler?
Hi, Pete Steckler, I'm alone.
Jen Martell?
Jen Martell, I'm alone in the room.
Pete Cameron?
Good evening, Pete Cameron, and I'm alone in my study.
Molly Cowan?
Hi, all. Molly Cowan, Select Board Rep, and my two kids are here, but they are going to bed in just a moment.
Okay. And Gwen English?
Yes, Gwen English, and no one else is in the room.
Thank you. And Dave Sharples is with us. Dave?
Dave Sharples, currently alone in the room.
Okay. Let's see, you're out of the basement. All right. Agenda tonight, our first item is to act on the minutes of October 8th, 2020. Did everybody get those in their packet? Yes, no?
I received the September 10th meeting.
Pete Steckler has his hand up.
Pete.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just have a couple of...
you did get them in your packet.
I did. Oh, no, we didn't get them in our packet. I think Barb emailed them separately.
Okay, that's why I don't have mine. Yep.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, I think. So I guess this is pretty nitpicky. Line 73, the word swale should be spelled S-W-A-L-E, not A-I-L. And then the only other comment I had is on line 83, where it says, Mr. Steckler questioned having a condition to replace the proposed snow storage area. I think it should say Mr. Steckler, what do I want to say? Suggested a condition that eliminates the proposed snow storage area beyond the parking area retaining wall, just to be a bit more clear there. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Gwen?
I didn't print the minutes out, but I'm just going by my memory for better or worse, but sort of toward the end of the minutes, there was a reference to the builders for the property that's on John West Road. And, yes. And in one line it said it said buildings, and it should have been builders. It was referring to the people who were going to develop that property.
Okay.
And I don't remember if it's like line 180 something. That again, I'm just pulling this out of my hat.
Okay. Well, would the board be more?
I can look for it and send that to Dave. It was just a minor change.
Anyone else? Would somebody like to make a motion then to approve the minutes with changes as noted? John?
Sure. A motion to approve the minutes from October 8th.
Second.
As amended?
As amended.
Thank you.
No, still second.
Okay, thank you, Pete. All right, I'll call for the vote, please. Molly Cowan.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Pete? Cameron?
Yes.
Jen Martell?
Yes.
John Gruder,
Yes.
and myself, and I vote yes. Motion carries. Okay. Next on the agenda is request by Brian Cassett, excuse me, for the reconsideration of a yield plan with regard to the waiver request from the perimeter buffer strip requirement in conjunction with proposed single-family condominium open space development. Properties are located off Tamworth Lane and Cullen Way in the R1 low-density residential and NP neighborhood professional zoning districts. Tax map parcel S, number 96-15 and 81-53. Planning board case number 20-2. And Dave, you had some comments, I believe, to start this off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant has appeared before the board on several occasions, as you all know. At the September 10th meeting, the board voted to grant the applicant's request for a waiver from a portion of the 100-foot perimeter buffer strip in accordance with section 9.6.1.2 of the site plan review and subdivision regulations regarding the encroachment of the proposed roadway entering the buffer strip. At the same meeting, the board then denied the applicant's request for a waiver from the same section, but in regards to a different portion of the 100-foot buffer strip in accordance with section 9.612 of the site plan subregs regarding lot 5. It was noted that essentially lot 5 would be absorbed into another lot after the waiver denial and would therefore be an approval of a yield plan for 12 units. Subsequently, the board voted to accept the applicant's request for a yield plan approval of a 12-unit single-family open space development. Subsequent to the meeting, the applicant did raise a question regarding the criteria that the board applied. The board did apply in their deliberations the waiver criteria set forth in section 13.7, but did not at least articulate or verbally state the criteria set forth in the last sentence of 9.6.1.2, which states the board may approve a partial or total waiver of the buffer strip, or to the buffer strip, I'm sorry, let me start over. The board may approve a partial or total waiver to the buffer strip if the configuration or location of the parcel, with consideration of abutting properties, warrants flexibility to the proposed green space. So that is a criteria that's set forth right in section 9.6. The applicant, in an email dated September 10th, 2020 that I provided the board in your packets, Attorney Passe on behalf of the applicant stated that the board did not address the correct waiver criteria. After my initial review, I did agree and place the item on the agenda for reconsideration. However, after careful read of 13.7 and a discussion with our legal and a subsequent discussion with legal counsel, I feel that the waiver request needs to meet the criteria in section 13.7 and the criteria within the provision itself. The plain language of section 13.7 states that the planning board shall not approve any waivers from these regulations unless it shall make the following findings based upon the evidence presented to it in each specific case. Any waiver is clear to me that it applies to all waiver requests, and there's no language in there stating like unless otherwise specified herein or something like that, that would allow an exception to apply a different criteria that's set forth in another part of the regulations, so we see it as the additional criteria. Both the legal counsel advised that the criteria in section 13.7 applies and the additional criteria. The board did deny the waiver request regarding lot 5 because they found that the waiver did not satisfy 3 of the 5 criteria in section 13.7, but did not consider the additional criteria, at least verbally, or articulate that. And you also approved the perimeter buffer, the other one where the roadway goes into it. But I assume, I just have to assume, since you denied based on 13.7, that maybe you may not have considered criteria 9.6.1.2. So I was initially thinking, well, why, just let it lie. We didn't, maybe articulate the criteria, but the council, after consultation with legal counsel, they suggested that we continue with the reconsideration, and the board consider that both the waivers, again, under all the applicable criteria, the 5 criteria in 13.7 and the criteria that I read earlier in section 9.6.1.2. And I did provide motions for your convenience, and I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have, but hopefully it's clear that you're just, and I would recommend you just keep this reconsideration to that topic. There's really, that's what we are considering. That's what we posted, is considering these 2 waivers. I did notify the public on this because I felt like it needs to be a public hearing, and the public, I would encourage, you also to open it up to the public and hear if they have any thoughts on this. I did get an email just a little while ago from Elisa Blaken, and I forwarded that on. I haven't even read it yet. I forwarded on, but she had mentioned in the email that she was going to read it in the record as well. And I believe, she has her hand up and she's in the audience. So when you get to that point, I'm sure you'll read that into the record. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lang. Sorry. Can I forgot to mention, you also received a letter dated yesterday, October 21st, 2020 from DTC lawyers from Justin Passe, several page document that lays out their argument for the waiver requests. So I sent that to you yesterday, and you all should have it. Unfortunately, I didn't have it for a hard copy, but you've all gotten it in your email, I assume.
I believe so. Yep. Okay. So let's start with the perimeter buffer waiver motion number 1, not motion, excuse me. The perimeter waiver regarding the roadway. The first one we did approve, but we should now apply all of the criteria to it. So we'll focus on that. Perhaps, Justin, you'd like to begin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good to be here tonight, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Justin Passe here with Brian Grisette at our office in Exeter. Christian Smith, who's usually with us, is not with us tonight, but if we have, if any technical questions come up, I trust between Brian and I, we'll be able to answer them. Thank you, Mr. Sharples, for the overview. I think that sets the table kind of well for why we're here. As Dave noted, back on the 10th of September, the last time that we were all together on this project, before the board was 2 partial waivers requests from the perimeter buffer requirement in 9.6.1.2. As Dave noted, one was for the subdivision road, one was for lot 5. The planning board granted the road waiver. It denied the lot 5 waiver. And as Dave noted, during deliberation, the board applied in that lot 5 context the general waiver criteria in 13.7 of the regulations. And the issue there, as we were observing in real time, is that that application was inconsistent with sort of what we had talked about, what Dave's recommendations in his memo had been to apply the 9.6.1.2 waiver criteria. So I tried to raise my hand. I tried to speak and I couldn't. And actually the email that Dave referenced, I sent while you all were deliberating, and obviously Dave didn't get it. So the next day, Dave did reply. He indicated that a mistake had been made And he gave us the option, either let the planning board address this when it reviews the site plan for this project, or correct it at the next meeting. And we opted for the latter. We said, well, let's just fix it at the next meeting. And after that, clearly Dave looked at this again. He got a legal opinion from the town council. And on Monday of this week, he gave us the heads up, which I appreciate, about this, the new interpretation here. And he gave us an opportunity to respond, which we have. And what we gave you, what we filed yesterday, as Dave pointed out, is sort of a very comprehensive bullet point analysis of both waiver criteria for both waiver requests, the Lot 5 request and the waiver and the road waiver request. And I'm not going to go through that line by line and regurgitate this. We have on several occasions talked about the uniqueness of this property and about these exact waivers. But we do hope that you use that document in the deliberation this evening, because like I said, it goes through each of the waiver criteria and in each of the standards and applies all of the facts that we have talked about at length in this case to that criteria. So I'm not going to do that. But what I do hope to emphasize very quickly tonight is just what a waiver really is. And when you think about it, it's very similar to a variance in the ZBA context. It is, in essence, a relief valve. It's a way to ensure that the town's regulations aren't arbitrarily applied to properties where it doesn't make sense to apply those regulations. And the foundational question really is, does it make sense to apply this regulation to this property under the circumstances that exist in the case? And that's what the criteria on 13.7 are getting at. That's what the criteria on 9.6.12 is getting at. I mean, looking at these circumstances, does it make sense to impose the requirement? And it does make sense to impose the regulation because in situations where imposing the regulation satisfies the purpose of the regulation, it makes sense. But where, as I'll explain, like here, imposing the regulation does not accomplish the purpose of the regulation, then the planning board really should waive it. And that's why there are such things as waivers. In this case, and with respect to the planning board, the standard is not whether reducing the density by one lot is reasonable or because there's a butter opposition for any other reason, which is kind of where the discussion went in September, whether it was reasonable to reduce the density by one lot. In this case, the Grisettes have already acquiesced to concerns of the butters, have reduced the overall density of the project from 18 proposed lots to 13. And so we would just submit that the real question here is, are the waiver criteria met, yes or no? And if they're met, we would submit that the planning board has an obligation to grant the waiver. So here, and this is critical, the point of the perimeter buffer regulation in the town's regulation is really threefold. It's to buffer incompatible uses from one another. It's to lessen the impact of development on neighboring communities. And it's to encourage and preserve green space. We would submit that both of these waivers, the road waiver and the Lot 5 waiver, should be granted because imposing the perimeter buffer on those areas do not accomplish the point of the regulation itself, which is why there is such a thing as a waiver. So regarding the road waiver, this is the one that the planning board already granted. The area of this waiver at the end of the proposed subdivision road is an area that abuts nearly a 31-acre unimproved property, the Mendez Trust property, which of course is Addie Grisette's property, and she offers her support for this waiver request. There are no impacts to public safety or health or wetlands. In fact, the location of the subdivision road as proposed ensures the least impact to wetlands that is possible. As you know, this property is challenging. I mean, there are wetlands around the access areas to Tamron Lane. The only real uplands on the property are on the opposite end of it, where the site plan, as you know, depicts the open space development. There is no change to the neighborhood or area, and really imposing the perimeter buffer here doesn't fulfill its purpose because it doesn't provide a buffer from incompatible use because it's all vacant, unimproved land all around it. It doesn't lessen the impact of the development on surrounding property. Again, it's all unimproved land, and it doesn't preserve more green space because it's all vacant, unimproved, and the Mendez Trust property is right there. So it doesn't make sense to impose that regulation, the perimeter buffer regulation, in that circumstance. Turning quickly to Lot 5, that's the waiver that was denied by the planning board in September. Again, there's no impacts to public safety, health, or wetlands. The plan has been reviewed and vetted by the town engineer and the TRC. This is unique property. It's burdened by wetlands. We provided significant additional information and a new plan which depicts wetlands in the area of Lot 5, which are caused essentially by activity, mostly by the town, on land surrounding this property. And granting this waiver would really just facilitate another very similar property, an identical property, being added to the Exeter Green subdivision. It would just become part of the neighborhood. If this were to actually be built, which of course it wouldn't, we're talking about a yield plan here, but if this were a real subdivision approval, Lot 5 and Lot 6 next door and Lot 4 across the extension from Cullen Way would all appear substantially similar to all of the other properties in the Exeter Green subdivision, which really begs the question, why would the perimeter buffer be imposed in this situation? And that leads to the most important point of all with regards to Lot 5. The perimeter buffer requirement does not apply in minor subdivisions. So, as you all know, minor subdivisions, 3 lots or less. So tomorrow, Brian Grisette could file a minor subdivision to create Lot 5, and it could be added to the Exeter Green subdivision, and there would be no perimeter buffer requirement. The only thing that would be required are, like every other property, the setbacks, the side setbacks. So if he could accomplish Lot 5 tomorrow by filing a minor subdivision plan, that's evidence that the proposal is per se reasonable. And as I've noted with the road waiver, imposing this regulation does not further the purpose of the regulation in this case, because it's not buffering incompatible uses. It's not lessening the impact of development on surrounding properties, because it would all be consistent residential development in the same subdivision. So it just does not make sense to impose the perimeter buffer under the circumstances of Lot 5. But as a way of potentially providing a way for the planning board to compromise and for us to compromise, we have laid out in our filing yesterday an alternative proposal, an alternative Lot 5 waiver request. And just to highlight, our current request, we're proposing essentially a 50% waiver. We're proposing to preserve the 50-foot no-cut buffer and reduce the structural setback in 9.6.1.2 from 100 to 50. This would create approximately 75 feet of separation between the building envelope on Lot 5 and the building next door at 28 Cullen Way. And just to be clear, even that would be totally consistent with the existing neighborhood as it sits today. But if it is more attractive to the planning board, it could consider an even greater, even less of a waiver, essentially a 30% waiver. We could preserve the 50-foot no-cut buffer in the regulation, and then on top of that, preserve the 70 feet of the 100-foot structural setback, which again would be like a 30% waiver. That would still preserve a 30 by 100 foot, a 3,000 square foot building envelope on Lot 5, and that would be bigger than at least a third of the buildings in the Exeter Green subdivision. It would also facilitate a 90 to 100 foot separation between the building on Lot 5 and the building at 28 Cullen Way. And again, a minor subdivision tomorrow could accomplish Lot 5, and the only setback that would be required is the 15 foot. So technically, there could be a building on Lot 5 40 feet from the existing building at 28 Cullen Way. So this proposal, this alternative waiver, would accomplish a 90 to 100 foot separation between Lot 5 and the building next door. So if that's more attractive, certainly Mr. Grisette is happy to go in that direction. And then finally, the waiver criteria talks about the difference between whether application of a regulation constitutes a hardship or a mere inconvenience. And the reality here is that denial of the waiver for Lot 5 ends up being about a 7.5% reduction in the overall density for the property. And that's huge in light of the high and ever increasing cost of development. And so, put another way, Loss of this lot results in 20% loss in the net value of the project after you add in all the expenses, and that's about $175,000. That is way beyond a mere inconvenience, especially when you consider, as you know, what this development and what the proceeds from the development are going towards, which are the medical expenses for Brian's spouse. So this decision is really critical. And as I've said now a couple times, if Lot 5 could be created tomorrow with a minor subdivision with no perimeter buffer at all, that is per se evidence that this is a reasonable proposal and that the waiver should be granted, either waiver, the 50% as proposed or the reduced alternative waiver that we've laid out. And then the last thing I'll say is that there has been a lot of opposition to this project. Attorney Britton has been involved, as has Mr. Keach, who is a civil engineer. And I would just point out that we have filed many pages of analysis with the planning board about these two waivers. And I don't recall a substantive rebuttal to our analysis as to the application of the standard in any of those responses from the abutters. I don't recall hearing an argument that we don't satisfy the waiver criteria. And I think that's because we plainly do satisfy the fact that the planning board consider our filing yesterday and grant both the road waiver and the Lot 5 waiver tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
When you're ready, Mr. Chairman, Lisa Blaken has her hand up, and so does Patrick Flaherty in the audience as
Yes.
public.
Okay. Nobody on the board wants to
Nope,
speak?
nobody on the board has their hand up at the moment.
Okay, well, let's go to the public then.
All right, Lisa Blaken, am I saying that correctly? Sorry.
Blaken. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thanks for the opportunity to comment tonight. So I'm Lisa Blaken. I live at 11 Tamarind Lane. I did send in a letter, but it was late today. So I know it was passed along. Thank you, Dave. I will read. And I have a few additional things based on Attorney Passe's comments also. So thank you for reconsidering the perimeter buffer waiver request for case number 22 this evening with the complete criteria from both 9.6.1.2 and 13.7 of the site plan review and subdivision regulations. In reviewing previous meetings, it appears to me as though both criteria were not fully evaluated during the discussions of either waiver. And I may have missed it, but I don't think the 13.7 criteria were applied to waiver 1 previously. Again, it could just be my not noticing it, but I think that may have been the case. I appreciate your giving both waivers thorough, fair reconsideration. I'll share some specific concerns and questions regarding each waiver, but first I would like to make a more holistic observation. When this yield plan was introduced, it included 30 plus acres of proposed conservation land in the Mendez parcel, 81-53, that would seemingly have mitigated some activities on this parcel, 96-15, and even support the applicant's arguments with regard to additional abutting green space compensating for the perimeter buffer waivers, or quote unquote warranting flexibility to the green space as specified in 9.6.1.2. Not only is the Mendez Trust land no longer a part of the project, the applicant has communicated to neighbors, both through email and in conversations, that he could, quote unquote, pursue independent development of the Mendez Trust property with 2 mixed-use buildings, end quotes. I would implore you not to consider or expect that the Mendez Trust property will be, quote unquote, untouched green space or conservation land. That is a separate property no longer attached to this project and should not be considered in either of these waiver requests. Although it would certainly be ideal if the land were ultimately to be entirely conserved in some way. I would ask you to consider the following as you hear the request for perimeter buffer waiver number 1 regarding the encroachment of the proposed roadway entering the buffer strip. First, this road already requires several other waivers and permits to facilitate the squeezing of as many lots as possible into the yield plan. These waivers and permits include a wetlands waiver, conditional use permit, a shoreline protection district conditional use permit, and the waivers already requested within the applicant's subdivision application. These include a 4-foot reduction in road width, different curbs, and no sidewalk. And I attached a copy of those from the application. Second, a natural vegetated buffer strip is required to lessen the impact of development on neighboring communities, wetlands, and other features as stated in 7.3.1. Where are the wetland buffers and boundaries in relation to the road end and cul-de-sac? It appears as though there may be overlap in the area of the requested perimeter buffer waiver, but is difficult to decipher on the yield plan. Third, this road is problematic. It's not a result of the lot. There's nothing unique to this lot, and it's not the result of a hardship. Any hardships due to the location and positioning of this road are entirely self-created by the applicant due to prior developments and transactions the applicant chose to make or not make on this property and surrounding properties. Lastly, the proposed road and waiver are not in the spirit and intent of the current regulations. Rather than securing multiple permits and waivers to bend the process to meet the project, this plan must meet the spirit, letter, and intent of those regulations. The plan should adapt to meet the regulations. Would combining lots 8 and 9 eliminate the need for this waiver and preserve the buffer in its entirety? On perimeter buffer waiver motion number 2, the request to waive a portion of the 100-foot perimeter buffer strip regarding lot 5, the board already voted unanimously on September 10th to deny this waiver based on failure to satisfy the criteria in 13.7.2, 0.3, and 0.4. Nothing has changed with regard to those criteria. The building envelope shown, which does not meet Exeter Green dimensional requirements, does not even fit within the perimeter buffer. I'd like to add here too, in response to Attorney Passay's comments, that the Exeter Green has specific dimensional requirements for any buildings. So anything you were to look at lot 5 and consider it to be added to Exeter Green, the ground floor area has to be at least 1,500 square feet. Finally, this is a project built on waivers and special permits, taking remainder land and squeezing it into this yield plan for profit maximization to the detriment of some open space development objectives, including water resource, wetland, and stream preservation. I again appreciate the board's reconsideration of these waivers and would implore the board to fully consider these waivers in the context of the entire project, including the cumulative project impacts, permits, and other waivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, you said another?
Patrick Flaherty.
Okay. Patrick, could we hear you?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lang Board. I appreciate it.
Whoops, we just lost you. Oops.
I am not, am I back?
You're back.
All right. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate it very much. I am probably not going to speak as eloquently as Lisa just did, but I did want to call out a few items with regard to the application of waivers. I will try to keep my statements specific to the yield plan itself, but as the abutter that is most, and I'm on 8 Tamarind, by the way, as the abutter that is going to be most impacted by the eventual development on this. The buildings and the plan that's being put forward has already been reduced, as Justin noted, from 18 down to 13. One of the big concerns that the neighborhood did have was around the density, the number of units and that is a meaningful reduction in the number of units that is being proposed. The second thing I would like to point out is that with regards to the waivers themselves, as Justin again also alluded to, there are many ways where this could be done and manipulated to align with a different subdivision process, get a far reduced buffer from neighbors, and if it were to be developed, have a more detrimental impact than what is being proposed here within the yield plan confines. And the last part would be from the covenants and restrictions perspective. I'm glad that Lisa brought that up. There are the covenants and restrictions that apply to the Exeter Greens. And I think her comments covered the ability to not only have a minimal or a minimum size for a first floor, but it also pointed out another item, which is that the covenants do call out the ability for any future developer of the remaining land, of which this is, to add units to that subdivision. I'm not sure if that is meaningful with regards to the specific provisions that Dave called out with regards to the waivers, but I just wanted to reiterate those points and say that with regards to us, and again, we are immediately next door to what the site plan will put forward as having the density of the development. We don't see any reason why the waivers at a yield plan shouldn't be approved based on our understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, there are no hands from the public, no hands from the board.
Mr. Sharples, Mr. Chair, this is Justin. I don't know how to raise my hand electronically here. I was trying to wave my hand in real life.
I saw that, yes.
Okay. May I just have literally 30 seconds to respond to Ms. Blyken's comments tonight?
Certainly.
Okay, so just to correct a mistake, we agree the protective covenants do have requirements about the dimensional size of buildings on their first floor. Ms. Blyken referenced the 1,500 square foot first floor requirement. That's why the building envelope proposed for lot 5 is 3,000 square feet. It's twice what's required by the underlying covenants. And then this notion that conditional use permits or minor wetland permits to access property are unique, are exceptional, as the planning board knows, is just not the case. This property is very unique by virtue of the location of the wetlands in the areas that one would access the property and the location of the uplands across the property from those wetlands. So those conditional use permit and a wetlands application are not exceptional, and in most cases they are part of every single application, particularly one on a property that is 25 acres in size. So that's all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And actually, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Grisette does have one quick statement if you entertain Mr. Grisette's comments.
Okay, certainly.
Trevor Knott also has his hand up in the public.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the comment regarding the Mendez Trust property, in reference to that it should not be considered, the regulation actually says to take into consideration abutting properties. And as we have in our submission and previously stated, at where Wild Apple Lane is on waiver 1, we stay totally out of the wetlands. It's designed to be environmentally designed for environmental protection. In regards to maintaining wetlands, buffers, forested buffers, and preservation, we point out that there is a minimum of 350 feet from the boundary line from Wild Apple Lane to any developable land, and that the land in between is already preserved. So the necessity of having a 100-foot buffer is already fulfilled. An example would be similar to what happened at Blackford Place, where the town owned conservation land adjacent, and there was no wetlands buffer whatsoever required upon that portion of the perimeter buffer, simply because there was already protected space. So I think we fulfill that qualification, and hopefully that clarifies it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, who else did you say, Dave, would like to speak?
The name is Trevor Knott.
Trevor Knott. Trevor, the microphone is yours.
Hi, Exeter TV person here. It seems that I'm getting a message that Trevor specifically has an older version of Zoom, and we'll have to promote him to panelist if he wants to talk. Is that okay? I can demote him when he's done talking.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. You're in now, Trevor.
Hi, this is Laura. Laura Knott. I'm Trevor's wife. I'm sorry. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that Mr. Grissett has been working on this proposal for close to 2 years now with the board, as I'm sure you're all aware. And I find it interesting that he chose to reopen this issue simply to gain access to one more lot and extend the timeline of his project now an additional minimum of 6 weeks at this point. So I don't quite understand that when he's been pressing so hard for the timeline to be accelerated and for things to move quickly. And I just think that there may be some ulterior motives or some other background behind there that maybe the board should take into consideration in their evaluation of this waiver, and actually both waivers, frankly. I do think that it's that this whole issue, as Lisa pointed out, has gone on very long, and there's lots of intricacies and trickiness, and it really isn't a relation to the property. It's a relation to the decisions that Mr. Grissett has made over the years and how to handle his property. He chose to block off that area. He chose to build Graybird Circle. He chose to donate the land to the town for Brickyard Park and thereby isolate his property from any other areas. So I don't think that that's a hardship that should be considered as part of a waiver criteria, but I do urge the board to reconsider both waivers in their entirety. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no hands up.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Now there's a planning board member, Pete Steckler.
Okay, Pete.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess, one thing I'm trying to wrap my head around here is that Mr. Passé, when he summarized the purpose of these waivers or the regulations, number two, he said, was to lessen the impact to neighboring communities. And I guess what I'm struggling with is if the town's regulations says that the land doesn't support the density that they're advocating for, that they require waivers for, isn't that the protection to the neighboring community that our regulations offer? If you put yourself as one of the neighbors on that Cullen Way there, the difference is, I think, between, 3 additional houses and 4 additional houses. And, the way Amazon trucks and UPS trucks and FedEx trucks are circling around all of our neighborhoods these days, that could be, I guess I question, and maybe Mr. Passé can respond to this, that our regulations are offering that protection to the neighboring community by not, over having too much density down that road. That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Thanks.
I hear what you're saying.
Aaron Brown has his hand up.
Mr. Brown?
Hi, Lang. I was hoping that Dave Sharples could surmise the reason that we've reopened this case a little more succinctly. As I understand it, Dave, we have a technicality regarding what sections of the regulation were applied when these waivers were voted on. And from my understanding of what you said here tonight and your memo previously, it sounds like the board did not apply enough of the criteria, that we applied some of the criteria, but not all. So I'm wondering, which leads me to believe that our vote would be more restrictive, not less restrictive.
Understood, but usually when you reconsider it and you haven't taken it in light of all of the criteria, you reconsider it. You don't just reconsider part of it, you just reconsider the waiver. Obviously, what you said before, if you still believe that, you can just say, for all the reasons previously stated, and add that to tonight. The thing was, our attorney, I got this from Laura Spector Morgan, who suggested this, is basically you consider 9.6.1.2 waiver as one waiver criteria, one waiver. And then there's 5 waiver criteria in 13.7. So the board should consider 6 criteria have been met. And in this case, last time, you considered 5, the 13.7, but you didn't consider the 6th. And that's why she said, reconsider it, now consider the 6th. But when it gets opened up for reconsideration, then it should be publicly noticed, and that opens up for others to provide new information, which they did this evening, both the public and the applicant. Does that? That was from the attorney recommending that.
So, Lang, if I can continue.
Please do, yes.
So, Dave, in that regard, are you suggesting we roll through the 6 criteria like we would normally do on a waiver and just that's how we should act? I don't personally feel like we need more testimony tonight. That's my own opinion. I don't know about the rest of the board, but that we should roll through the 6 criteria and move to action rather than spend till 10 o'clock tonight and continue this hearing again.
Yes, as I've suggested before, if you feel the criteria have been met, then you don't need to go through each of the criteria and say why they've been met. If you feel some of the criteria have not been met, well, you already articulated that. If you have any change of mind since the last time, you can reiterate that, or you can just say, the record speaks for itself, and when we consider the other waiver criteria, and then you consider the 6th criteria just for the record, and it gets approved or denied, on that basis. You follow me? To make it a little more succinct without going down every waiver criteria.
I do. Okay. Mr. Chair, at this point, I'm ready to make a motion on the first waiver if you are ready to hear one.
I'm ready to hear it, yes.
Did you close the public hearing and appoint?
Oh, no, I haven't called a public hearing.
And did anyone appoint? Did anyone get appointed? No one needs to be appointed. There's 7.
No.
I just checked the list. Yeah.
Justin has his hand up.
Yeah, I think a question was directed to us by Mr. Steckler, if I could answer it.
Yes.
Lang, honestly, I don't really need to hear why Justin thinks a waiver applies. I don't want to shut him down, but.
Mr. Brown, you don't want to hear a response to a question raised by a planning board member?
Justin, I've read a 10-page document already that says exactly why you think the waivers apply.
I have not responded to Mr. Steckler's question.
Okay, give us something new then, other than what's in your 10-page document.
Well, what I'll give you, Mr. Brown, is the answer to the question that was directed towards us. So the question that was directed towards us by Mr. Steckler was, considering the language in 7.3.1 of the zoning ordinance that says that part of the reason for the vegetative buffer is to lessen impact, how is that not served here by denying the waiver? Because as Mr. Steckler stated, there's additional traffic. What I would say is that language cannot mean that this type of lot is not permissible, because as we've stated, lot 5 could be subdivided tomorrow and created. So that's a relatively straightforward point, which directly answers Mr. Steckler's question.
Okay.
And we addressed these criteria tonight because we did not address the criteria, because up until now in this case, according to Mr. Sharples and all of our analyses, we were not applying 13.7. So when the decision was made this week through consultation with the planning board's attorney that both standards applied, we, as quickly as we could, addressed all of those criteria in the filing. So I don't understand this notion that we're pounding paper at the planning board. We're responding to things that are happening beyond our control.
Okay. Thank you. So let me close the public session at this time and bring the case to the board for action. And Aaron, you have the motion you said you'd like to make?
I do. I just want to ask Mr. Sharples a quick question.
Yes.
Dave, with the perimeter buffer waiver motion number 1 at the prior hearing, I think that was just approved, but were there any conditions on that approval?
No, I do not. No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that, because I didn't see any in my notes, but I wasn't certain. Okay. Perimeter buffer waiver motion number 1. After reviewing the criteria in section 13.7 and section 9.6.1.2 to waive a portion of the 100-foot perimeter buffer strip in accordance with section 9.6.1.2 of the site plan review and subdivision regulations regarding the encroachment of the proposed roadway entering the buffer strip, I move that the waiver request of Brian Grissett, planning board case number 20-2, be approved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Moved and seconded. Is there any particular question or discussion you wish to have? If not, I'll call the vote, roll call vote. So let's see. Molly Cowan?
No.
Nancy, oh, excuse me, Gwen English?
I'll vote aye on this one.
Aaron Brown?
Yes.
John Gruder?
Yes.
Pete Cameron?
Yes.
Jeff Martell?
Jennifer Martell, yes.
Jennifer, what did I say?
That is like
Sorry.
Jeff, but.
Oh, well, I got a new nickname for you. All right, your vote was yes?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that motion carries. 6 in favor, 1 opposed. Okay, now we need to look at the Lot 5 waiver request. Want to discuss those criteria at any length to review that? We've had some new information presented.
I'm in a position to make a motion if you're ready on it.
Not hearing from anybody else and any concerns, I'll take your motion, sir.
In regards to perimeter buffer waiver motion number 2, after reviewing the criteria in section 13.7 and section 9.6.1.2 to waive a portion of the 100-foot perimeter buffer strip in accordance with section 9.6.1.2 of the site plan review and subdivision regulations regarding lot 5, I move that the waiver request of Brian Grissett, planning board case number 20-2, be denied.
Is there a second?
For the same reasons as stated in the record previously?
Yeah, I didn't say that the first time, but yes.
Okay.
Chair, I'll second the motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. All clear on that? All right, then I'll call.
Wait a minute.
Excuse me? Pete?
Yes, please. What exactly is the wording of this motion now? Could Dave or whoever took that down, could they read that back to us so that we be sure exactly what we're voting on? I think I understand.
You want me to read it again?
I can, okay. It doesn't matter, I can do it, whatever.
All right, I think Pete asked you to do it, Dave, so I guess.
Okay. After reviewing the criteria in section 13.7 and section 9.6.1.2 to waive a portion of the 100-foot perimeter buffer strip in accordance with section 9.6.1.2 of the site plan review and subdivision regulations regarding lot 5, I move that the waiver request of Brian Grissett, PB case number 20-2, be denied for the reasons previously stated in the record.
All right, and those reasons are identifiable in the record.
Correct. I can pull.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to be sure that was a meaningful reference. I'm not troubled other than just to be sure exactly what we're voting on here. I now understand.
Basically what you're doing is you're reaffirming the prior vote of the planning board, but in addition to that, you're saying that the 6th criteria, because you're not saying that that's included as the grounds for denial, you're saying it meets the 6th criteria in 9.1.6.2, but fails to meet the 3 criteria you previously determined it failed to meet.
Therefore that's saying that basically adding 9.6.1.2 doesn't change the original vote, the original consideration.
No, because it's 1 out of the 6 criteria, but by not providing it as grounds for denial, the board is saying that it feels it met that, or Mr. Brown's motion says it feels it met that criteria, but still fails to meet the 3 criteria it failed during your prior deliberation.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to call the vote. I'm going to start with Pete Cameron, please.
Well, just having had it clarified, I have to vote yes.
Okay. Jennifer Martell?
Yes.
John Gruder?
Yes is a vote to deny, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yes.
Aaron Brown?
Yes.
Glenn English?
Yes.
Molly Cowan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion passes as stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay, the next case we're going to do. Pete? Yes.
So we've gotten, this is satisfied then the motion for reconsideration. I think I understand that. David, is that correct?
That's correct.
Correct, yes. The next step I mean, you didn't have to change. If you made a change to that, then say, for example, you passed the Lot 5 waiver, then you'd amend your yield plan but now you don't, because the number you accepted 12 lot, and that still applies. And then the next step would be for them to come to an open space development at a future date.
Okay, but for all intents and purposes, the motion to reconsider or the filing to reconsider has been satisfied.
Correct. It is.
Thank you.
Completed.
Okay. Continued public hearing on the application of Phillips Exeter Academy for a wetlands conditional use permit and site plan review for proposed construction of a new 60-bedroom dormitory on school campus. Subject property is located in Front Street and Tan Lane in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District, tax map parcel number 72-209, and it's case number 20-12. And we welcome you back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, the application was tabled on October 8th. It was in front of you for site plan review and a conditional use permit to put a new dormitory and tear down the old Fisher Theater. And the board got through discussion, got to the deliberation stage, granted both waiver requests that were being asked regarding grading within 5 feet of a property line, and then the other with the number of parking spaces. But then the board got into a discussion during the conditional use permit, and they got into discussion about snow storage being pushed over the back retaining wall at the end of the parking area. And the applicant asked to see if they could resolve it somehow and take a look at it and come back to the board. And they have provided a solution that I'm sure they will present to you this evening. So what's left is the vote on the conditional use permit and the site plan motion. And I do, if you get to that point, I do have suggested conditions of approval, and the Conservation Commission in their memo suggested a condition of approval for the conditional use permit regarding an invasive species management plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mark, are you going to begin?
I will, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Oh, thank you. Well, it's always good to be here. So so I appreciate that. And I just wanted to, I want to hand it over to Corey from Altus Engineering pretty quickly in the interest of time. I just wanted to say we appreciate the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And with the great work that Altus Engineering does, I think we came up with a better solution that's a win-win. I think it addresses the concerns that were raised with the planning board. And I think operationally it's a better fit for us. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to hand it over to Corey from Altus to walk through it and answer any questions. But I think it's pretty straightforward. So hopefully it addresses the concerns that were raised 2 weeks ago. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Corey Belden from Altus Engineering, and hopefully you've all had a chance to go through the packet. Last meeting, I think, as we discussed, it was a very productive meeting. I think we were on for about 2.5 hours discussing the project and really worked through a lot of the issues. It's a wonderful, we feel it's a wonderful project, but, we weren't excited about, the snow storage and placing it over the wall either. It is we had some, concerns about maintenance. So after the meeting, we really went back and took a look at that area in particular. I believe it was board member Steckler that requested that we look at providing some sort of treatment for the snow runoff as we, in that area. Could we do a BMP? Could we do some sort of stormwater treatment? And if you look at the, I'm going to share my screen here quickly. share.
Here we go.
So let me see, is it here? Yes. So this is the snow storage plan that was in the resubmittal. We looked at the profile of the ground going down where the parking lot ended on the north side. And at first we were looking at doing some treatment on the lower side of the wall. But once you get down, as you can see in the profile, once you get on the other side of the wall, you're really getting down into a lower area. The soils down there aren't very conducive for infiltration and constructing. So we looked at constructing something elevated down there where we could get some infiltration. But in the end, if we're doing work, in that area, we felt really the best opportunity that we had was just to keep everything up on the high side of the wall, bump the wall out just a little bit further, create a snow storage area up on the high side. We can drain it back to a low point, have a deep sump catch basin that will collect any sand from the snow melt into that basin, provide the pre-treatment, and then all of that runoff will then also go over to the infiltration chamber that's already designed for the project. So then we can connect it back to our infiltration chamber, run it through there before anything is then outletted back to the existing outlet that we had designed for the project. So we really felt that this alternative, keeping everything on the high side, solves the concern about having, putting snow over the wall, having it sort of out of mind, out of sight, maintenance, and then we had some fiber rolls, and we were looking at doing, sediment protection down on the low side of the wall. But this really, hopefully solves the concerns. PEA, the Academy, I think they like this alternative a lot more. It keeps everything manageable, much more manageable. They don't want to put snow over the wall. They will not in this option. So it really provides a better maintenance plan for the project. The impacts are minimal. I think you can see in the report, there's about 150 additional square feet of impact from the project. A lot of this area was already being impacted with grading and providing the outlet and doing the pipe outlet to for the drainage outlet. And there's approximately 200 additional square feet of pavement that would be in this area. Again, where we've run the hydraulics for the drainage study, and we can connect that back into the Stormwater Gallery B, which has the capacity to hold that little extra flow. And really the drainage calcs had very minimal change based on this design. So again, 200 additional square feet. We were previously reducing the impervious area within the buffer by over 1,075 square feet. So now we still have 875 square foot reduction in impervious area within the buffer from this project. The stormwater treatment, we're providing stormwater treatment to a site that didn't have any before. We're treating over 20,000 square feet of impervious area for the site. And in addition to that, as we discussed at the 2 weeks ago, when we met with the Conservation Commission, they had requested that we also remove invasive species within the wetlands, and the Academy has agreed to move forward with that and agreed to that request. So really, this project now, I think the benefits on the wetland are just, any work that we're doing within the buffer, I think the benefits, in the wetland far outweigh any potential impacts. So I think from there, I'd like to open it up to any questions from the board.
Okay. Comments or questions from any board members?
Yeah, Pete Steckler.
Okay, Pete, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the PEA team. I really appreciate you taking our comments to heart and identifying a creative solution that's definitely outside the box thinking that we were thinking about last time. And for what it's worth, I support this. I think, you're really getting the true groundwater, recharge here that, is important, and reducing the runoff from the site. And this seems to be an even, again, a better solution than the direction that we sort of pointed you in at the end of the last meeting, which was to create some sort of detention, rain garden, swale type of feature down there. And it seems like this is a more stable solution that's a win-win for the Academy. And also, I think, for the wetland system. So just want to say thank you for digging in.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else?
Jen Martell, and then Gwen English.
Okay, Jen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what Peter Steckler said, that I agree that this is I think a much better design than was there before, definitely. From, my big concern was sort of operational and maintenance. I think that system before, it may have worked sometimes, but when snow got too much, or when, the choir logs were, starting to break down, it maybe could have failed and maybe wouldn't have been noticed because it was on the downside of a wall. So I like the fact that now it's all up in plain view. It's very straightforward for plow operators. And I think it's just a much more elegant solution. It is more impact, but I appreciate that, we're looking at the overall project as a benefit, as a holistic benefit to the site. So I think that the extra disturbance is worth it for the benefit that we're getting in managing that snow storage.
Thank you. Gwen?
Yes, I actually want to thank Jen and Peter for bringing this up at the last meeting. This was an area that was really of concern to me, and I'm glad that they pressed the issue. And I also want to thank the Academy team for addressing it and doing what I think is a great job to kind of alleviate some of the problems that could have resulted had this gone forward as the original plan had been designed. And I just think overall, I think this is a great project. I think it's an enormous improvement over what is there, and I think it will really enhance that part of the Academy property and the campus overall. And just generally want to say it's a pleasure working with all of you on this. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Is there anyone else, Dave?
No other hands.
Nobody in the public?
Nobody in the public.
Okay, let me close the public session. And
there's people in the public, but none of hands are raised.
Yeah, fine. Any other discussion the board needs, or I'm willing to hear a motion at this point? We've thoroughly discussed this whole project, I think, in our previous meeting with this particular concern, which I think the solution is excellent.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion if you'd like. This is
Okay,
for the
Glenn?
conditional use permit. Is that what we're starting with?
That would be good. Yes, that's the right order.
All right.
Yes, and may I hold on just a second? I have a condition the Conservation Commission suggested.
Yes.
The applicant has already provided this, it worked on it, but just to reiterate what the commission had requested, I don't think the applicant has any issue with it. The applicant shall provide an invasive plant management plan for the stream, wetland, and wetland buffer area for the satisfaction of the natural resource planner prior to signing the final plans.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
After reviewing the criteria for a wetlands conditional use permit, I move that the request of Phillips Exeter Academy Planning Board case number 20-12 for a conditional use permit be approved with the condition that David just outlined.
Okay, is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, roll call time. Pete Cameron, let's start with you, please.
Yes.
And Jennifer.
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
John Gruder?
Yes.
Aaron Brown?
Yes.
Gwen English?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's condition is approved with the one condition connected to it. Okay, I'm willing to hear a second motion. I would like to make that. Oh.
As you know, I'm trying something different. Do you want me to read my suggested conditions of approval, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please do.
Okay. And I just thought I'd do a share screen so you know.
Oh, you're getting clever.
Follow along. Yeah, there's nothing nothing you haven't seen before. There are 7 conditions. They're all the standard conditions. Number 1, an electronic as-built plan with details acceptable to the town shall be provided prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This plan must be in a DWG or DFX file format and in NAD 1983 State Plane, New Hampshire FIPS 2800 feet coordinates. 2, a pre-construction meeting shall be arranged by the applicant and his contractor with the town engineer prior to any site work commencing. The following must be submitted for review and approval prior to the pre-con meeting. The stormwater pollution prevention plan, if applicable, be submitted to and reviewed for approval by the DPW prior to the pre-construction meeting, and a project schedule and construction cost estimate. 3, third-party construction inspection fees shall be paid prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. 4, the stormwater system operations and maintenance report and the stormwater management inspection and maintenance manual dated September 2020 shall be completed and submitted to the town engineer annually on or before January 31st. This requirement shall be an ongoing condition of approval. Number 5, all applicable state permit approval numbers shall be noted on the final plans. All appropriate fees to be paid, including but not limited to sewer, water connection fees, impact fees, and inspection fees, including third-party inspections, prior to the issuance of a building permit or a certificate of occupancy, whichever is applicable as determined by the town. 6, all landscaping shown on plan shall be maintained and any dead or dying vegetation shall be replaced no later than the following growing season, as long as the site plan remains valid. This condition is not intended to circumvent the revocation procedures set forth in state statutes, and if determined applicable by the Exeter Department of Public Works, the applicant shall submit the land use and stormwater management information about the project using the PTAP online municipal tracking tool. The PTAP submittal must be accepted by DPW prior to the pre-construction meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we discussed any others, so someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion again.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the request of Phillips Exeter Academy Planning Board case number 20-12 for site plan review, or for site plan approval be approved with the conditions that Dave just outlined. I think I got that right. Yeah.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Pete. Cameron. Okay, let's, I'll call a roll call vote. So Gwen?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Pete Cameron?
Yes.
And I vote yay. So that's unanimous vote. Congratulations. We look forward to the open house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So do we. Thank you, everybody.
While you're here, the next item on the agenda, the application to fill up Exeter Academy of a shoreline condition use permit to wetland impact within the district setbacks and buffers for the proposed repairs of the existing hill bridge crossing the Exeter River and associated improvements. Subject property is located 2 Gilman Lane in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District. Tax map parcel number 71-118 and 83-1. It's case number 20-14. Dave, would you like to comment on this one? Or start us with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant submitted the application plans and supporting documents in early September, which are all enclosed for your review. Plan sheets G3 and G6 are specific to the shoreland CUP application that is the application before you. There was no technical review committee meeting of this application. However, the plans were reviewed, passed around to various folks, and was reviewed by Kristen Murphy, our natural resource planner, and the Conservation Commission. Copies of the New Hampshire DES wetland and shoreland applications have been provided by the applicant in electronic format, and we put them on the town website under supporting documents for this meeting. The applicant did appear before the Conservation Commission at their October 13th, 2020 meeting to discuss the conditional use permit. The Conservation Commission voted unanimously to recommend that the application be approved with the condition that the applicant provide closure signage that identifies the water quality benefits of respecting the closure and indicates an alternative river access point nearby, because the intent of this is to help deter continued use of this area as a river access point. And I did provide the Conservation Commission motion, and staff has no more comments on this application. And the only condition would be the one I recommended that was recommended by the Conservation Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mark, you want to start again on this?
I will, yeah, if you don't mind. You're not sick of me yet, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Microphone is yours.
All right, thank you. So I'll do this project's a little smaller than the last one, but just as nice. So I'll introduce our team. So we have with me tonight, Ron Johnson, our Senior Manager of Grounds and Athletics, and Heather Taylor, our Campus Planner Architect, and then our Engineer of Record from Stevens Associates. We have Bob Stevens and Jim Turner, and I'll hand it over to them in a few minutes to get into the technical. But just if you're not familiar with Hill Bridge, it's really our only crossing of Exeter River on our campus. It was built in 1914, and so we're proud of the little bridge. It needs a lot of work, though. It needs some TLC. And so since 2014, we've been trying to do a project. We've been working with Stevens Associates between doing some design on the maintenance, but also looking at strengthening it. And then we have some erosion control that we need to address on the banks of it. So we tried to do it in 2014, like I mentioned. We tried again a couple of years ago, just didn't have the funding. So we're hoping again next summer in 2021 that we'll be able to accomplish the project. We're happy about it. I mean, we're glad that we're going to be able to go forward and clean up the bridge and take care of some pedestrian and vehicular concerns that we have with that bridge. Plus, like I mentioned before, we'll be able to strengthen it and take care of some maintenance items that we have on around the bridge. So with that, I want to hand it over to Jim Turner from Stevens Associates and just go through the application and the technical information.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. So as Mark mentioned, the project is primarily a project to repair the bridge. And the project really has three components. It has structural concrete repairs to the bridge itself. The bridge is going to remain the same length. It's going to remain in its same position. It's going to have concrete repairs to the cracks on the outside and to the surface, and then some repairs on the inside as well after removing the asphalt surface. The second component is some biostabilization repairs of the stream banks, and that is to repair erosion to the stream bank that has happened over the years, in part by foot traffic, but by a variety of causes. So the intent will be to repair it with some natural processes, and then to add more planting and landscaping along the bank. The third component is to provide some scour resistance to the bridge, which means that along the abutments where the ends of the bridge meet the shore, there will be some riprap, some large stone placed under the water line, around that abutment and around the sides. As mentioned, we have 3 permits that we've been seeking: the local conditional use permit for shoreland, the state wetland permit, and the state shoreland permit. The permitting has been primarily for related to wetland and shoreland impacts. The work will be done with cofferdams that will block off the edge of the river so that the contractor can access the underside of the arch and install the riprap and the bank stabilization. We're looking at a construction schedule likely next summer. The project's been reviewed by New Hampshire Fish and Game Natural Heritage Bureau, and they found no impacts to endangered species. With that, we're seeking the conditional use permit from the town here. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Questions that board members may have? Don't all speak at once.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We haven't opened the case.
Oh, well, would you like to do that?
Just a thought.
Have you a motion?
I'm happy to unless someone else wants to do it.
No, you're doing fine. You've got the microphone, so.
Okay, let me lower my hand. Mr. Chair, I move that we open the application for Phillips Exeter Academy for a shoreland conditional use permit to permit wetland impacts within the district setbacks and buffers for the proposed repairs to the existing hill bridge crossing the Exeter River and associated improvements. The subject property is located at 2 Gilman Lane in the R2 Single Family Residential Zoning District, tax map parcel 71-118 and number 83-1. It's case number 20-14.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Thank you, Pete. Roll call. Pete, how do you vote?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. Now, we don't have to have everything presented the same again, thank you. But I apologize for missing that. Thank you, Gwen. Any other discussion or questions? We do know the one condition of approval that David had gone over with us. Anyone like to make the motion for the shoreland conditional use permit?
Sure.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, before we make a motion, I have a question.
Okay, hold it, John.
Okay.
Sorry, John.
It's all right.
I noticed that there's some additional site improvements besides the bridge, and that the applicant's landscape architect is here tonight. So I was just wondering if you could walk us through the additional site improvements that are happening as part of this project.
Okay.
I'm here, Kyle Zick, landscape architect. I'd be happy to do that. I can share my screen. Zoom in. Well, I guess before I zoom in, just to orient you, here is the hill bridge that we're talking about. And the football stadium is on this side of the river. The baseball field and track are on this side. So zooming in to this half of the bridge, the other site improvements we're talking about are along what's referred to as Hammy's Way. So it's currently a gravel road that leads to the bridge, and then there's a footpath that intersects with that. That intersection has grown over time, and we're trying to define that a little tighter so that there's not this kind of spread of gravel. And then we're also providing a turnaround here, a vehicular turnaround for a vehicle that makes it all the way down here and doesn't intend to go across the bridge. They have a chance to turn around in a defined space that's delineated by boulders and a fence. And there will be a gate here as well. So what happens is a lot of cars stack up along here for game days or for other events. And so this is being formalized some, that the parking would be on reinforced turf. So it's a crushed stone and topsoil mix that can support the growth of grass and infrequent parking. So we keep the cars back from the end of the bridge, and that leaves a landscaped open space at the end of the bridge that can be empty most of the time, but could have some pedestrians and people hanging out just enjoying the river. And as was mentioned, there are some areas that we're discouraging and cutting off river access, and we're doing some pretty robust erosion control with timbers subsurface to prevent erosion, and then native planting. And there's also some invasive vegetation management. On the other side of the bridge, similar ideas, but a little different approach because the cars aren't in the mix. But there's a road here and also Gilman Lane that continues. There's a pedestrian desire line already that shortcuts this intersection because people just want to take the shortest route. So we'd be formalizing that. And then similar to the other side of the river, we're having a fairly robust erosion control with the timber subsurface and native vegetation replanting and some invasive management and native replanting. Were there other questions on the improvements?
This is, Chairman Plummer, this is Mark Layton. If I can speak a little bit more, I just want to, Kyle, can you zoom in on that area again where you were, where the turnaround is for the cars? This is one of the things I mentioned quickly about the vehicular pedestrian conflicts that we have. And right now the gate is right at the beginning of the bridge. And where you see the walkway to the left is kind of the pedestrian walkway that's there now. And so vehicles can drive all the way up there. And then so there's a conflict safety issue that we have. And we're trying to address that by moving the gate further away, as you see, and then the turnaround. And that way the pedestrian access and bike access really doesn't have to worry about these cars when the gates are closed about having that conflict. And then we've been, as Kyle mentioned, the reinforced turf for parking. We allow parking now, but it's hard to restrict it to get it so close to the bridge. So it's part of where we want to push it back a little bit and really control where parking is when we have events that where we allow that. So this is just part of we're building off or piggyback offing the bridge project to help with some pedestrian safety concerns that we have right now.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Jen? I'm glad you asked the question, by the way.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure. I didn't exactly understand what all the other work was, so I appreciate the explanation. And it makes you know, just from my point of view, it definitely makes sense to clean all that up and make sure people and cars know where they are allowed to go and where they can go, that it won't be detrimental.
If you're familiar with it, sometimes like the Wild West, they have a game going on. Cars are all over the place out there.
Yeah.
And walking through, you got to walk around the gate, so it'll be an easier access for the pedestrians at that point.
One just follow-up question related to access. So the Conservation Commission recommended one of our conditions be signage related to the access. Is that something that, or Dave, can you clarify that condition?
Yeah.
Or we could talk about it later. I'm not sure if this is the right time.
Oh, that's fine.
Well, the commission suggested that the applicant provides closure signage that identifies the water quality benefits of respecting the closure and indicates an alternative river access point nearby. So basically directing them away from this area and to somewhere else. And they said the intent of this is to help deter continued use of this area for river access. It sounds like to me that people are using this maybe as a point of access and there's one nearby, so they're recommending put signage there to direct them elsewhere.
Yeah, Dave, I can explain that too. I mean, if you're familiar with a bridge, you know that there's on the if you're walking to the bridge on the right hand side, there's severe erosion where over time people with their dogs have used it to access the river, and so just continuous erosion has happened. So we've closed it off actually a few years ago, and with this project, we're gonna with the landscaping that's the erosion control approach that Kyle outlined, we don't want that to happen again. So that was the discussion that we had with Conservation Commission, was to reinforce that, and by putting up signage. And then just west of that site, we have another location that is more suitable for water access for dogs. So that was the conversation that we had. We fully support that. We don't want any river access at that point. It's pretty steep, and so it just invites erosion by using that. So yeah, that's the background.
Okay, thank you. I didn't understand that was related to dogs, but that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, they got 4 feet instead of 2, so they're going to move twice the amount of gravel with the go. Okay. Anything else? What are you thinking about, Gwen? Whoops, no.
Gwen has her hand up.
Okay.
Oh, you're one step ahead of me, Lang. You're thinking before I am. This really doesn't, I don't know that this applies to the conditional use permit, but just in looking at the turnaround spot, and you have it marked off by lots of boulders, had you entertained the idea of perhaps putting some like 1 or 2 trees in there, just to maybe on the back end of the turnaround, just so people won't run into the rocks, and it would just add some vegetation to that area? That's just a thought and a question.
I don't know, Kyle, if you want to answer that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, there is one existing tree there that we wanted to give some space to. That was the only reason that we didn't add others.
Okay. Is that a large, I saw it on there. Is it a large tree right now, or growing?
No, I think it's, maybe an 8 or 12 inch tree from what I recall.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was on one side of the turnaround?
That's correct. Yeah.
So one on the other, maybe on the other side, you think that might hamper that tree's ability to flourish, or?
No, probably not. No, I think potentially there's room to add another.
Okay, just a thought. If that could be done, that would be great.
We can definitely look at that. I think the rocks, it was really for this, so the vehicles would stay where they're supposed to stay and not try to circumvent anything. So
I understand that.
Yeah, the trees.
They look a lot better than Jersey barriers, see?
Yeah, exactly. Or ruts, ruts in the grass, or.
And they're cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else with questions or thoughts?
Pete Steckler.
Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess the one thing that's slightly concerning to me is the stone dust pathway on the east side of the river. Everything else with this proposal is mostly focused on within the existing footprint of developed, or unnatural spaces in this project area along the river. And that is the one item that starts encroaching on the riverbank. So I don't know if the applicant can sort of make the case for that feature, or if they could push it a little bit further away from the top of the riverbank there, because you're getting pretty close to the top of bank between the edge of that pathway and the top of bank. Does that make any sense?
Well, does it make sense to show? Can you share your screen again, just so we're all first? And correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but that's it. We're trying to fix basically an existing. It's an area that's turned into a walkway just from people taking a shortcut through that area. So go ahead, Kyle, you can explain it better than I can.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're formalizing what is a pedestrian desire line, a social path right now. And we feel like by formalizing it, we can actually maintain that better and prevent some of the muddy conditions and some of the erosion, and using a stabilized stone dust that's got a binder in it that can keep it together and consolidate it better as well.
And you're not representing the top of bank sort of jurisdictional wetland boundary on this plan, are you?
I am not, no.
Okay. I'd be curious how close that is to that top of bank line, and similarly, if you'd be willing to, push it a little further away from the river there.
Yeah, I think that's something we could look at, if we can go a little bit further. I just don't want to defeat the purpose of having people, shortcut a new path that we would create,
Right. Yeah, I understand that.
Jim, I don't know, is there another drawing that might have the top of bank, or at least to show the topography a little bit better as far as where it's not that high right there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at drawings now to see which one would be appropriate here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, share screen.
And maybe as a reference, it would be nice if there was at least 25 feet of separation between the top of bank and that pathway.
So you can see here here's the delineated top of bank and this erosional feature. So this plan is rotated a little bit, but this is the east side of the bridge, or the northeast side. Top of bank is in here, and I think that footpath is back in this kind of region. So that's probably looking at something like 20 plus feet back. Let me see if I can find another drawing here.
Pete, just to answer your question, I mean, we can definitely push it back a little. I mean, we'll I don't know if you want us to address this as far as if it's in the field, but we can push it back as far as we can. But like Kyle said, we just don't want to defeat the purpose, right? We get it too far out of that desire line, then it's going to happen no matter what. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could also, if you did push it a little further back, if you could limit mowing on the inside a little bit of it, because people aren't going to walk through something that's not like lawn, So anyway, yeah, I don't know how the board wants to, I assume you're looking, or I don't know if the board's ready to approve this tonight, but, you know, maybe a condition of approval could be something like to make sure that that pathway is set back at least 25 feet from the top of bank feature.
Here's another image. The bridge itself is a little faint here, but this image shows where the path is in relation to that delineated top of bank.
Yeah, do you have a scale on that?
Yeah,
here's your 25 foot, here's the 50 foot buffer zone. So this is a 25 feet here, you know, so that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-ish feet. Well, this, now remember, this part here is going to be stabilized. So this is an erosion area. So really the top of bank is out here, which is approximately 25 feet there. In fact, this is the reference line to 25 feet. So there's your 25 feet right there.
In that area between, in that 20-foot buffer area, I'm sorry, did you have plantings in there? Did you have anything that would discourage people from cutting through and getting closer to the river?
There is a planting plan that has some plantings in that area.
Okay. And would it be left unmowed? I wasn't paying close attention to that when you showed the plan, so the planting plan. But I think Peter's suggestion was a good one in that if it's tall grass, if it's something that is not particularly desirable to walk through, that would be a good deterrent. Would certainly help.
It's actually shown as seed mix 2 on our plans, which is native tall grass, sedges, and shrubs. So it would not be something that would be mowed.
Okay, well that helps. Right?
Good, yeah. Other questions or comments?
There are no hands up at the moment.
You have some conditions of approval, Dave?
Well, the only condition, it's a shoreland, was the one that I mentioned earlier that's recommended by the Conservation Commission, that the applicant provides closure signage that identifies the water quality benefits of respecting the closure and indicates an alternative river access point nearby.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'd be willing to accept a motion or hear a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, John?
After reviewing the criteria for a shoreline conditional use permit, I move that the request of Phillips Exeter Academy Planning Board case number 20-14 for a shoreline conditional use permit be approved with the following conditions, and that is that the applicant provides closure signage that identifies the water quality benefits of respecting the closure and indicates an alternative river access point nearby.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jan. Questions? And I'll call the roll call for the vote. Let's start with you, Gwen.
Aye.
And Jen.
Aye.
And Molly.
Aye.
John Gruder.
Aye.
Aaron Brown.
Yes.
Yes.
Pete Cameron.
Pete, yes.
And I vote yes. So it's affirmative vote. And we can't wait for the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Hopefully it's soon. Oh, it's gonna be the same time as the other one, hopefully. So.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Okay. Wakefield Investments have requested an extension. Am I right, Dave? Not using it right?
Yeah, the next two, Wakefield's Investments and People's Bank, are the same engineer, Berry Surveying, is represented. They asked to be continued to the, in my memo, November 22nd. Is that what I put my memo around here somewhere?
Check your calendar so we get the right date. It's the 19th, November 19th, right?
November 19th, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's around here somewhere. Yeah, November 19th at 7 p.m. I did tell them that they've asked to be continued a couple of times. So as I stated in my memo, I said that I think that if they don't come present November 19th, I think we should just take them off the agenda. They should withdraw, and then when they're ready, they'll come back. But they assured me that they would be ready for the 19th and ready to present.
Okay. So could we have a motion, please, to that extent? For Wakefield Investment, Inc.
I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to November 19th for Wakefield Investment, 2 Hampton Road, LLC.
At 7 p.m.?
At 7 p.m.
Thank you.
7:05.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Thank you, Gwen. All right. The heavy vote here. Gwen?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Pete Cameron?
Yes.
Aaron Brown?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we'll continue that case. Now we're looking for a motion for the People's United Bank. Same motion, but People's United Bank, please.
Yeah, same motion. I put in my memo that the request of People's United Bank PB case number 20-3 for site plan approval be continued until November 19th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
You want a second?
Well, you could just say so moved. You need a first.
So moved.
So moved. Okay, now I'll go for second.
I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Gwen. Pete, how will you vote?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
And I vote yes. It carries. Okay, are there any town planner items, Mr. Sharples?
Just one, Mr. Chairman. I mean, usually this is the time of year where we start discussing zoning amendments and bringing things forward, and we're still continue to get applications. I don't see a lot of time. I am working with the Master Plan Oversight Committee, looking at, potential amendments, but I don't sure how much time we're going to have to get into any, complicated proposals. But I just want to tell you that we did do an impact fee study, and we're bringing an update to the impact fees in town to the select board, I believe at their first November meeting. I think it's the 9th. But anyway, we're bringing forward, but that's a separate issue. The consultant also recommended a couple of updates to the impact fee ordinance itself, and that would have to go to the planning board and then on to the voters. So I'll be bringing that forward. Also, there's a firm panel update and floodplain districts, and we've been asked to update our regulations to reflect current regulations and so forth, and we'll do that. So outside of that, I think there isn't, we'll have discussions, but I think those are the amendments we'll be moving forward, and you'll hear about more about those in the coming months as the Master Plan Oversight Committee fleshes them out a little bit more, and we'll be back to have a public hearing at some point prior to December, and then moving it on to the warrant.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. So this came up in a recent case where I think our regulations had changed with regard to all the work we did on the wetland buffer language last year. I'm wondering, Dave, if the town has a more up-to-date site plan review and subdivision regulations than the April 2018 copy that you gave me when I started on the board.
We certainly do. I will, if everyone's that case, I'll just send out a new copy to everyone. Barb makes those updates constantly. She puts them on the website, or it should be the most current version on the website. So I will make sure, coordinate with her tomorrow, make sure, and everyone gets the latest copy. We'll send it out electronically, and then I'll ask if anyone wants a hard copy. And if you need a hard copy, just say so, and we'll put it in the meetings packet.
In advance.
Okay.
Copy, please.
Pete. Hard copy for Pete Cameron in advance.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just note.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Things do change. Okay. Our next meeting is going to be the 12th of November, not the 5th. And then the next one in November will be the 19th. Because in November and December, we moved to the 1st and 3rd. And somebody got ahead of themselves and behind themselves when we...
1st and 3rd or 2nd and 3rd?
First and third.
Third in November.
First and third. For November and December.
We generally meet the 2nd and 4th. In November, it will be the 2nd and 3rd. The 12th and the 19th.
That's this year.
Aaron, did you have your virtual real hand up?
No, that was just two. Trying to help Lang out. I'm not next to him. I can't poke him. Normally I can poke him. So.
And Nancy Belanger has her hand up.
Oh, Nancy.
Hello. Yeah, so I was one that got the meetings mixed up at our last meeting. So I am an alternate, so I'm not a voting member. So I'm going to give you a heads up now. I have a budget meeting that night, a budget recommendation committee meeting. So unless you don't have a quorum, I won't be able to attend the November 12th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll miss you. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Aaron?
I was going to make a motion to adjourn because I know John Gruder wants to get onto that debate that is getting hotly contested very shortly.
9:01.
I can't believe you got the meeting done.
Okay.
2 hours.
Get that TV on, John.
No, I don't want to.
All right. So if you made the motion, John, are you going to second that motion?
Never.
And because I'm not going to be here at the next meeting, I'm just going to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving now because I won't.
Okay.
You too, Nancy.
Thank you.
Same to you, Nancy.
Thank you.
That's right. It's moving up on us, isn't it? Okay.
Happy Halloween.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Aye.
Favor?
Yay, yes.
So, Pete, was that a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Aaron seconded?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those in favor? We got to do a roll call vote. Pete, what do you say? Do you want to retire or?
Let's make it unanimous.
Okay. You can start off.
Yes, Pete.
We've already left,
Okay,
so
yes.
I think you're adjourned.
We're adjourned. Okay. I say we're adjourned. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.